Have you ever made up a character for your game or book and discovered they're slightly too generic? Do you have a go-to persona for a city guard or the innkeeper? Well, you're in good company. I probably had a dozen guards with the exact same personality throughout my career as a game master, and that's perfectly okay. However, I always look for ways to become better at what I do, and in this video I'm going to introduce an amazingly powerful tool that I ran into a few weeks ago. With it, you'll be able to create round, three-dimensional characters with very little effort. Ready? Let's go! What's up, Battlethumps? My name is Aviad and my mission is to help Game Masters create amazing experiences with their players. And today we're doing it with the Enneagram. You may have heard that name before because it became quite popular in recent years, but in case you haven't, the Enneagram is a typology system that describes human personality as a number of interconnected personality types. 9 of them to be more accurate. But before we dive deeper into the secrets of the Enneagram and how we can use it to make better characters, I want to take a few seconds to thank my friends at Mammoth Factory for sponsoring this video. Mammoth Factory is a new company that makes remarkable TTRPG content, including adventures and incredibly dynamic miniatures for 3D printing. I mean, look how awesome these are. I was lucky enough to take part in the playtest of their first adventure, Everdune Wrath of the Ekrothari, which is a desert survival game for 5th edition and a really good one at that. It has vicious sand elves and giant sandworms that cause the entire landscape to quake and shift. You can find more about them at www.mftribe.com. And now, back to the video. About a month ago, I ran into a very curious post on Facebook. The post was made by Sveta Azriel, a theater director whom I didn't know at the time, and she invited people to participate in a short course about Enneagram with emphasis on its applications in acting. The course was fascinating. We learned about the 9 personality types and their different combinations, we saw dozens of examples from films and TV shows, and had a very honest discussion about ourselves and where does our personality fit within the Enneagram. I really feel like I know myself a bit better thanks to that. And I knew back then that I want to share that with you, because this is a goldmine for anyone who creates characters, and Game Masters do that quite a lot. So I reached out to Sveta and she was extremely kind and interested in helping. So I've brought her in for a chat, so you get a taste of Enneagram from a true expert in the field. Enjoy! Hey Sveta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Aviad. Thank you very much for having me.
So I've been lucky enough to be a part of the Enneagram program. We had a few sessions going, and I was hoping you could tell our audience a bit more about it.
Sure. So the Enneagram is a personality typing system. Ennea in Greek means 9. There are 9 different types of the way our personality is built. Each type has its own way of viewing the world. And from that view, we have our own belief systems, our own motivations. It's a whole world. And in the program, we were studying those types. We're just going one by one and going really deep into them.
Yeah, and as we were going through each of them, we all learned a bit more about ourselves through each sessions and each personality type. And I got this idea going through it that this can be a very useful tool for writers and game masters who want to make characters who are more round and interesting, even if we don't have a lot of prep time to do that. So I was hoping you could help me a bit and maybe take an archetype and just so everyone can see the power of Enneagram in action. So perhaps take like a city guard, someone who guards a city, and maybe we can use that archetype and create 3 different characters based on some personalities of the Enneagram.
Sure.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's do it. It sounds interesting.
Okay, let's give it a shot. So
okay,
where would you start? Where would we start with that?
Actually, with that one, I would start with the first type. Number 1, his name is the Reformer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's a very characteristic kind of flavor for a guard, because the reformer, that's a person who is as if was born with a book in which they have all the laws of humanity. Like it's a book, a special book in which it's written how should you act in every situation, what is the right thing to do. I think it could be very good for a guard because they do have rules that they need to follow.
Yeah. So a very strong moral compass.
Exactly. And also a very strong judgmental compass, because those things really go well together. So just imagine if you knew, if you were in a world in which you think we were all given this law book when we were born. So we should all be aware of the laws in our world. And we all know how to act in each situation, what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. And then you go into the world and people act differently. And they don't necessarily listen to the laws in this book. But if we all have it, then that's really frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It could be very annoying, because then if you know how you should be acting and I know how you and I should be acting, but then you don't, that's really infuriating.
So they would get very angry.
Anger would be a
people.
major issue. Anger will be a major issue with them. And also this is a body type, which means that they experience their emotions in their body. So for example, anger would be experienced like electricity stream in your body. And the only way to really let it out of your body would be to tell the other person that they were wrong. And that way, very often they would look a bit righteous, they will come off rigid.
Yeah.
Often when they have such a profession as a guard, for example, most of their communication with other people would be about guarding. And so socially, they will not be very popular because they will find themselves just correcting everyone around them all the time. And sometimes that would be a source of quite a lot of frustration for them, because they actually don't think they come off as rigid as they do. And it might be very hurtful for them to see the reaction that they get with this.
I can imagine someone telling them, "Hey, man, chill, it's fine."
Exactly, and that will it will blow their mind. They will, they would want to kill someone who would say something like that, because they hear that all the time too.
So they are motivated essentially by maintaining that law, that the feeling of what is right.
I think more accurately, they're motivated, but by doing what is right. Because as rigid as they are with everyone else, they're 10 times more rigid with themselves, because they do know what is the right thing to do. And that would be their main motivation. They would really want to be okay with the law all the time. So just for an example, if you would define that the right thing to do is to be flexible with people, then they will make that as a rule, as opposed to making people doing what's right.
Right. So having an actual law system, like a book, working as a guard, gives them a lot of, I guess, some comfort in knowing like, this is the book, these are the rules, and I follow everything and I'm okay. I'm doing something right. And that would kind of make them comfortable.
A lot of confidence. They drive confidence in arenas which already have rules, when you don't really have to use your own mind to decide, when it's quite obvious what you need to do. Like, for example, when you're driving, it's already a pre-written set of rules and you know exactly what you need to do. So they would feel safe in the environment.
Amazing. Okay, that's just one. This is one type of guard. We have many types of guard, but just just taking that at least 9, and then we can also combine a few of these. But we'll get to that, to how we do that in perhaps future videos. So just by taking that persona, adding the archetype, we have a full-fledged character right there. I know exactly who that person is. I know how they're going to interact with the characters. I know what matters to them. I know what they fear. And I think that's very powerful. So what other persona we can put on a guard?
So I think the next most interesting one would be actually the following one too, which is the helper. So the one was a body type. The helper is a heart type. They're a person, a people person. It's someone who is, their view of the world would be that we're all connected emotionally. We're all human. We're all people. We all have this human connection, and being connected, feeling connected to other people is the most important thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the source of their motivation. They want to feel connected, and they want to feel helpful and needed. They love knowing that someone needs them. So that type of guard would be something like, do you know that image we have of a London police officer, the one you can approach too easily, and they will happily with a smile give you directions and point you to where you need to go, and you don't feel like you're bothering them because that's part of their job.
Yeah.
And then we'll send you off and say, have a nice day. I see that guard as number two. Someone who is taking his job more into the people's person arena, helping others.
They're motivated to do that because they feel connected to other people, and they really want to help other people and believe that by doing that, this is the best way they can do that.
Exactly.
By just being there.
Their automatic focus would be on other people's needs, because just imagine if you would focus on other people's needs, you also have that superpower of detecting those needs and knowing how to fulfill them. And if you're that person walking around in the world that has that superpower, you're constantly in the position of helping other people, and so feeling connected to them.
I would imagine these guards would be more popular.
For sure, yeah.
And then certainly than the first type.
For sure, yeah.
All right. So we know a bit about what drives them. What would they be afraid of going into this? What would be a weak spot for them?
Because they're such a people's person, the weak spot is about that too. There will be the most frightening thing will be feeling emotionally detached from others. If people would not want the connection to them, or if, for example, they would feel that the only reason people are communicating to them is because they need something from them and not because of who they are, that would be very painful and hurtful for them. Yeah, I guess I think the most frightening thing would be to be left behind, to be left alone, to be without connection to other.
I would imagine it can also be very difficult at some situations, with moral decisions. They would lean towards helping even criminals because they feel some sympathy towards them, or would be more lenient on these areas. Maybe others could think of them as soft for not doing what needs to be done as a guard.
Yeah, and also they would usually choose someone else's needs over their own. They would usually see other people's needs and wants over their own, and it will be so important for them to be loved and liked by others that they would overstep their own boundaries for that.
So they could be perceived even as a pushover, like someone can use that to their advantage. Maybe other gods who want a promotion, someone who is more interested in that kind of thing, could use them perhaps to get that.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so they might end up feeling used as in their darker kind of corners of life.
You can say that in the lower development levels, it's quite a common experience for twos to feel used and exploited by others.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much beneath the surface when you have the personality type, when you understand it. and you can put it on this person, and you know, on the surface level, it's a very nice character that you can meet in the city, who will be very helpful. Um, but there's something beneath the surface, and I feel as a game master that this can add so much to the interaction to make a character more believable. Even just saying like, yeah, the guard is very helpful for actually playing. Yes, whatever you need. This is over. You know, you can get to the city over there, but I recommend taking the other route. It's less crowded at this time of day. And I could also convey to them that this guard really cares what you think about them. It's, you can get that from them.
Yeah.
And I feel that kind of adds a lot, because we 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 know people like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, now I'm curious about what is another type of personality we can put on a city
Okay.
guard.
I was thinking to take it as far as we can from what we were discussing so far. We can talk about type number 5, which is called the scientist.
Oh.
Yeah. So the scientist, and so this is a head type. All 9 types are divided to heart, head, and body. And so 1 was a body type, 2 is a heart type, 5 is a head type, which means they live in their head. And they're called a scientist, and another good name for them would be the anthropologist, because they have that characteristics of like being very interested in what is happening in the human race, in relationships, but not as a participant, but as an outsider.
As an observer.
Exactly, as an observer. Yeah. And it's a very funny thing for me to see a character that is characterized as the scientist, number 5, but they need to be a people's person.
Yeah, they need to
Well,
interact
they
with
work with
people all the
people,
time.
exactly, like a guard. Because I guess if they would do whatever they want, they would sit in some lab and just observe the earth. But if we put it on a guard who has to be in interaction with other people, I think it could be a really funny character, because those people are really guarding their own resources, like time, energy. For example, do you know those people who are really particular with their sleeping hours?
Yep.
Those are number 5s.
Yep, I can see that.
Do you know the people who would have a hard time to meet up in their own place because they need their space to be like their own, and they're not really open with inviting other people inside?
Yeah.
So this is the scientist. This is that person who is really guarding their own resources. They always know when are they going to have dinner, what are they going to have for dinner. They're usually really particular about what they eat, how much they sleep, how much they interact with people. Social interactions are usually exhausting for them.
So
So
what would drive a character like that to go and become a guard? Like, I'm trying to think what aspect of being a guard would interest them, right? Because it's all about something that is interesting to them, something that they can explore, research, and try to understand in taking that position.
Yeah. And I think being a guard, as opposed to being like one of the participants, if you're a guard, you only come in, you interact with other people on those ends of interactions. You don't have to live with them. You know what I mean? Like you can just be, it's like being an anthropologist, but within that world, because you're guarding something. So your objective is that city that you're guarding. And the fact that you're coming in interaction with other people is like a byproduct of your job. Whereas what interests you the most is just observing from aside the city life.
Seeing the city evolve and change and the relationships between them. So I guess that these characters would be very informed in things that are going on. They would read all the news and kind of be interested in everything that's going on. Maybe they'd be good investigators.
They would be fantastic investigators, and usually investigators are characterized as 5s. It's very common. Like, do you know the character of Sherlock Holmes is a classic 5.
Yeah.
But Sherlock Holmes is also interacting with people. He would never give that up. I mean, he makes it look like it's exhausting for him, but he's a people person.
Yeah,
in his own way.
An interesting character to encounter.
Yeah.
So how would we kind of characterize that when we meet this guard with the scientist persona? How would we describe or role play that character?
Well, first of all, the fact that they're in their head I think, is essential, because they would not necessarily be comfortable looking in someone else's eyes directly. They would not necessarily be comfortable with just physically interacting with people. They are very, very informed, as you said, and smart, and they read a lot, and they take a lot of different interests. And in their own way, they are experts on many, many different subjects, but they would never say that they are. They would always feel like before I define myself as an expert of something, I have to take a bit more reading about the subject or get some more education. So
yeah,
it's
eternal student vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I imagine like they could perhaps like not looking at the characters, staring aside, answering them, but not looking at them, but also kind of mentioning some tidbits from, things they've kind of realized or pieced together by looking at the different characters, like seeing, I don't know, the wizard has a staff. This guy would already realize that they know a few spells, and they would already kind of piece things
Connecting
together.
the dots.
Yeah. So he would be very insightful.
Yes.
In the way he interacts, though not very direct.
Yes. And I think their perspective would be sort of like, oh, that's interesting kind of perspective. They would look at everything as something to explore. So even if someone would be very emotional in front of them and even being directing their anger at them, they could think about that. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they're so mad at me. It's not necessarily going to evoke an emotional response on their end.
So they could be perceived as emotionally blocked,
detached.
Yeah.
Sometimes even emotionally helpless. They are a bit stuck in their head, and when they need to express their emotional world, it's really difficult for them. It's really difficult for them to just say, I feel something. It feels invasive for them when they say something like that.
Would you say that they fear like being emotionally vulnerable?
I don't think it's vulnerable as much as exposed.
They don't like being like seen on the emotional end of things.
Yes. When they share their emotions, they feel like the other person is invading their own emotional space.
Wow. Okay. That's a very interesting character.
Yeah, I have lots of examples from like TV series that are really that exactly. Like, as I said, Sherlock Holmes, but also House, which is based on him. Yeah. House is just, whoever saw it can just really say, oh yeah, that's it. That's what it is.
Yep, exactly that. That's fascinating. And I am certain, like knowing the other types, I am certain we can do this for every single one. We can take like a guard and put every single persona on it, and we can try to combine personas and get so many characters. So this just shows the strength of Enneagram in character creation and embodiment, which is fascinating. So,
and it's an endless game, because we have 9, but they have different combinations in between them, and you can play with it really forever. It can be really interesting.
So I encourage our viewers to kind of look into it a bit more to see what else is there. We will be reviewing the rest of the personas in upcoming videos. So definitely check those out. I think we'll do the, again, archetypes and 3 personality types and explore the rest of it through that. But if you're interested right now, I'll put links in the description for further reading for everyone. And also, Sveta, you're doing this program, this sessions over again, right, in Hebrew. But I will put a link, or your profile or whatever you want, so people can find it, because I truly recommend it. It's originally intended for actors, I think, was the initial
It's actually
advertising.
it's like a self-development system, but I'm a theater director, so I did a workshop for theater creators, for writers and actors and directors, and we were really speaking about it from a perspective of portraying a character.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that, make sure you check it out as well in the description. Sveta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. I had fun.
In the next video, we'll discuss the applications of Enneagram in our world and throw in a few tips on building player characters with the Enneagram. We will also explore 3 additional personality types using a different archetype, and as you've probably guessed, I have a 3rd video planned to cover the remaining 3. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe and hit the bell icon to activate your notifications. In the meantime, I put a few links in the description for additional reading about the Enneagram, and a link to contact Sveta if you want to join her next Enneagram course. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons who make creating these videos possible. If you like what I do and want to support, Patreon is the best platform to do so. Patrons also get high quality playtested D&D 5th edition content, including adventures, creatures, magic items, spells, and many more. Until next time, friends, remember that you are awesome, keep being awesome, and I'll see you beyond the screen. Bye!